And good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I am your host, as always, Tony Defio, and I thank you for joining me live on this cold and windy Friday night in Pittsburgh. And as I say every week, I hope it's a little warmer wherever you are. But if you're in Pittsburgh like me, or close enough by, well, it's almost March, so we're almost through this winter, and I'm looking forward to spring, and I hope you are too. And before I get started, as always, I'd like to encourage you to please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Behind This YouTube channel, where we bring you live podcasts each and every day, including this show, the Steelers Hangover, every Monday with Brian Anthony Davis and Shannon White, the great Shannon White, who brings so much calm and insight to Monday's show. He's really grounded it. I'm pretty sure Brian wouldn't mind me saying that. So please check that out. Check out Steelers pregame, Steelers Steelers preview, and Steelers postgame show. I think we still have that for you every week, even during the offseason. The Scobro show with Dave Schofield and Rich, his big brother Rich. Touchdown Under with Matty Peverall and Mark Davison. And I'm sure Mark Davison's feeling pretty good with the Bengals the other day in the Super Bowl. So please check that out. And check out the Curtain Call with Michael Beck and Jeffrey Benedict. And, of course, you can catch all those live shows that are on YouTube. You can also catch those on Facebook Live. And as I say every week, if you're watching me on Facebook right now, be nice. I saw a lot of comments on Friday about the article I posted. There were a lot of swear words and even a very naughty and nasty emoji directed at me. So, yeah, please be nice on Facebook. But if you can't catch me live on Facebook or YouTube or any other of the live shows live, you can catch them on any audio platform after the fact. I like iHeartRadio. I have it on my Roku stick, but you can choose Spotify, Apple, you name it. Wherever you can find audio podcasts, you can find our stuff. And we also have audio only shows, including from the cutting room floor with Jeffrey Benedict, what Ian's talking about, the Stat Geek, Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman, the Live Mic with Michael Beck, and I think that's all of them. So please check those out. And, of course, check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website, the editorial side, where we bring you news, commentary, film breakdown, any bit of Steelers news, we're going to have it for you. It's your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. It's the best Steelers site on the internet, and you won't be sorry. And of course, let's say hello to the live chat. And I saw that Kathy Forehead was the first one in tonight. So hello, Kathy. You get the golden star. She's a legend. She's been around. She's always there to support all the shows. And she's joined by Steelers Pittsburgh, Mike Fewer from Facebook, Sherry Richards from Facebook, who says, hey, Tony. Hey, Sherry. Steeler Chick 46, another legend, Donald Winston. Pedro. Just me. Speaking of legends, Just Me's with us. Trucker Dad Wes. That's Wes Hitchcock. Wow, I recognized the picture. Otherwise, I would have thought it was somebody else. Clarence Washington. This is awesome. Great crew tonight. George Teston. Great crew. So let's talk about the Super Bowl first. I thought it was a great game. I was trying to watch it while I was bowling and while I was at a Super Bowl party. And as you know, if you're a diehard veteran football fan, watching the Super Bowl at an actual Super Bowl party isn't always the best way to watch a Super Bowl. Not because it's a horrible party, but because you have friends and family, and you're. I find myself often more interested in talking about other stuff and joking around and showing off than I am with watching the game. To me, the best time to watch the Super Bowl, as far as like concentrating on it, is when I'm home alone, but that's not as much fun. So I guess you have to sacrifice a little to be among friends, and I didn't mind. I had a great time on Sunday night. But I did watch the game and as much as I could, and I thought it was very entertaining. It looked like early on, the Rams were gonna blow the Bengals out. It didn't look like Cincinnati's defense had any answer for Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, OBJ. and the Rams jumped out to a 13-3 lead. And the Bengals came back and made a 13-10 game on the halfback option pass from Joe Mixon to T. Higgins. They got right back in it, but it looked like the Rams were going to go right back down and score another touchdown. But then OBJ got hurt. He suffered that unfortunate torn ACL. And I think that turned the game as far as how it would play out from an offensive standpoint from there on out, because really the defense took over from there. You know, the Bengals went into halftime down 13-10, and just like that, coming out in the second half, they scored on a very controversial bomb from Joe Burrow to Higgins to make it 17-13. And Higgins clearly interfered with Jalen Ramsey on the play, grabbed his face mask, and that's how he got separation. And then right after that, the Bengals intercepted Stafford and converted that, parlayed that into a field goal, and it was 20-13. And you wondered if the Bengals, if this would be their time, but the Rams defense stepped up from there on out. And really, Cincinnati's offense had several drives after that, several series after that, several possessions to take a commanding lead, 10, 14 points, and they just didn't score again from there. And the Rams, they closed within 20-16, and then at the end they took a 23-20 lead on a Stafford to Cup touchdown with about a minute and 25 to go. And you wondered if Joe Burrow was going to put the entire Bengals team and the city of Cincinnati on his back, the entire franchise on his back, and lead the Bengals down for a Super Bowl winning touchdown that would make him the greatest player automatically. Well, not the greatest, at least the most important player in Cincinnati history, but it wasn't meant to be. Maybe when all is said and done, Aaron Donald will wind up being the most important player in Rams history, because he certainly made the two most important plays on that Bengals drive back to back. It was 3rd and 1. It looked like the Bengals were starting to roll pretty good, and they were going to at least get into field goal range for McPherson. But 3rd and 1, Perrine, the running back, I think his name Perrine, was in the game, and it looked like he was going to get a first down. But Aaron Donald just grabbed him like a rag doll and threw him to the ground. He showed how strong he was on that play. And then one play later, Donald got a hold of Burrow and obviously disrupted his pass, and Burrow threw an errant pass, and that was it. And the Rams were the Super Bowl champions, the first title for the Rams in the city of Los Angeles anyway. And it was, I thought, people talk about defense being an afterthought in today's NFL, but I think Sunday's Super Bowl was an example of how important defense still is. And if you can put your if you can win the battles in the trenches, which obviously the Rams have no trouble doing with Aaron Donald and company, Von Miller, and if you have good secondary play, which they did with Ramsey and company, you can still be successful on that side of the ball in today's NFL. And, on those two plays, obviously TJ Watt's Defensive Player of the Year, but I think on those two plays, Aaron Donald showed us all why people constantly say that he could be named Defensive Player of the Year every year. The guy's just that dominant. A lot of people are talking about him being right up there with Lawrence Taylor as the greatest defensive player of all time. It's hard to argue that now, after the kind of career he's had up to this point, and now he has a championship, and what he did to help the Rams win that championship. He willed that team to a title on those two plays, and that's, to me, the definition of willing a team to victory. So, if you want to know, and also if you want to know why the likes of Donald and TJ Watt get paid so much money, is because they can make those kind of impact plays to win you games. They don't have as much impact as a quarterback does, but in situational football, they can, and Aaron Donald did, and that's why the Rams are champions of the football world right now. So kudos to him. Kudos to the Rams. Kudos to the city of Los Angeles. According to the footage at the parade the other day, not a ton of people showed up, but I kind of get that. The Rams have sort of jerked Los Angeles around over the years. I mean, they moved from Cleveland many years ago. Los Angeles fell in love with them as much as LA can fall in love with any sports team outside of the Dodgers and the Lakers, I guess. And but in 1980, 1981, whatever year that was, I think it was 80, they moved to Anaheim, and then eventually in 1995, they moved to St. Louis, where they stayed for 21 years. In the meantime, the Raiders moved from Oakland to LA in 1982, I want to say. And they won a championship there. And they moved away in 95. Yeah. So I guess you can say all these football teams have been jerking the city of Los Angeles around. And when you have a city like that with so many diverse entertainment options, it's hard enough to be the headliner, let alone a football team multiple football teams that keep moving in and out. So, but the great thing about the Rams winning the Super Bowl this year is they did it early enough after moving back in 2016. They made it to a Super Bowl in 2018 and they won it in 2021. So, that'll help with establishing a fan base, establishing some passion, and maybe getting people to adopt this team as their own again. From what they were saying on the radio this week from LA natives, the Raiders they still consider the Raiders their team in Los Angeles. But, again, they did win a championship there, so that helped to maybe forge that relationship many years ago. Of course, the Chargers are there in LA, and I don't have much confidence in the people of LA adopting the Chargers, because when was the last time they made it to a Super Bowl? When was the last time they made it to an AFC championship game? So they're going to be second-class citizens as far as the football team is concerned. And they're really the San Diego's team anyway. They never should have moved. Something should have been done to keep the Chargers in San Diego. And I get the feeling that within the next 10 years, they're going to be back in San Diego. So, but it was a great story. Obviously, Donald got his ring, Pittsburgh native. Matthew Stafford got a ring, and that might have, and he made the key play at the end for the Rams on offense anyway. Had the key drive and the key play, the key pass at the end. So that'll go a long way in establish or forging his legacy. I mean, whether he makes it to Hall of Fame or not, who knows? But he can always say he won a championship, and he can always say he turned his career around thanks to a trade from the Lions to the Rams. So kudos to him. And obviously, kudos to the Bengals. I know they've been the butt of jokes all week, especially in Steeler Nation, because they are the Bengals. They are AFC North foes, and they're now 0-3 in Super Bowls. And, I get why people are making fun of that. I mean, it's easy to do. If you're a Steeler fan, you don't want to see the Bengals win. Most Steeler fans, anyway. I know there was a big debate in the 2 weeks leading up to the game, but I'd say most Steeler fans probably didn't want the Bengals to win. It's hard to root for in most cases anyway. It's hard to root for a division rival in the Super Bowl. So I get that, and I wrote what I wrote on Friday, and it drew a pretty passionate response, which was what I was going for. But there was really a more subtle point I was trying to make with that article, the one about how mocking the Bengals for losing the Super Bowl is a bad look, and I think it is. Ultimately, I think it is a bad look. I think it's sour grapes. I think it's a defense mechanism. Because, say what you want about the Bengals and losing the Super Bowl, but it's still a tremendous thing to get there. and they still had a fantastic year. And they seem to be heading in the right direction as far as their football program is concerned. Now, they are the Bengals, and they could bungle it through ownership and coaching and who knows what else. Mike Brown's their owner, and he's not necessarily a beloved figure in Cincinnati, and for probably a lot of good reasons. I mean, the word cheap has been thrown around a lot to describe the Steelers over the years, but I think that aptly describes Mike Brown. So even in a salary cap league, you can be cheap, and I think Mike Brown has demonstrated that over the years. So they could blow this thing and not take that final step to a Lombardi trophy. But, the past doesn't really have anything to do with right now, unless they make it, unless they repeat history and make the same mistakes. But right now, Joe Burrow looks like the real deal. They have a great offense, I should say, a good defense, and a lot of room under the salary cap. They just need to make some tweaks, and if they make the right moves, they could be the team to beat in the AFC for the next 4 or 5 years. So, but the point I was really trying to make is, as fans, we should enjoy ourselves just a little bit more. We should enjoy the journey a little bit more. And that's kind of what I was trying to say in that article. The Bengals lost, but I think we could also look in the mirror and think about the couple of times that they lost the Super Bowl. It's only been twice. And how we still talk about that, especially the one that happened in 1995, 1996, that's campaign. Poor Neil O'Donnell, he's still persona non grata here, public enemy number one, or at least in the top 10 as far as infamous sports figures. There's no relationship at all between him and the Steelers. I don't know if it's a mutual thing. I don't know if he just doesn't, I've read some things about Neil over the years that would suggest he's maybe a little full of himself and maybe didn't quite always get along with reporters. So maybe and teammates. So maybe it's a two-way street, or maybe it's a one-way street. Maybe it's O'Donnell who thinks, forget Pittsburgh. I don't need them anymore. I don't know. But there's certainly no relationship at all between Neil O'Donnell and the Steelers, and he's only one of 3 quarterbacks who have ever taken them to a Super Bowl. And I think that's it's a shame that team's not celebrated more overall. There are a lot of great players that played on that team. Levon Kirkland, obviously Rob Woodson, Carnell Lake. I can go on and on and on. A lot of great players that were on that team, and Kevin Green, the late Kevin Green. And, they should be celebrated a little bit more. And they're not, because they're in the shadow of all these other past Super Bowl winners. And I think they're also a victim of the quote-unquote standard that Steeler fans have. And one of Mike Tomlin's many isms, the standard is the standard. And that probably gets repeated more than any of the others. And, really, I think when you it's okay for the organization to have that standard. I think every organization has that standard, most of them anyway. I mentioned the Bengals earlier. I'm not sure what their standards are, but most organizations in professional sports, their ultimate goal is to win a championship. So, are the Steelers really that much different than anybody else, in that regard? So, it's okay for them to have that standard and to, say it all the time, but, is it really healthy? Is that the right word for fans to if they don't win a Super Bowl, I don't care. I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to celebrate. I'm not going to be satisfied, because it's sports is supposed to be fun, right? It's a hobby, and you look at some of these fans and you go back and just scroll through their social media pages, and you go back 5-10 years, holy cow, are they ever happy? Are they happy? They're definitely obsessed with the Steelers, but are they ever happy with them? It's called a hobby, not a job. So, I could see being miserable at your job all the time. It's hard to escape that kind of thing unless you're really doing what you truly love. But a hobby, I mean, shouldn't bring you that much pain, that much misery. So, the whole, the standard is the standard. When it comes to the Steelers, though, I mean, are they really the only ones who can lay a claim to that? I mean, if you look at recent history, they've won 2 titles since the 70s. 43 years now, they've won 2 championships. So are they really the standard bearer for Super Bowls in the NFL anymore? I mean, obviously, right now it's the Patriots. Yeah, they've tied the Steelers, but they're really the standard bearer. They won 6 in 17 years. So, I mean, they're the most, recent dynasty. They're really the standard bearer, and you can even talk about other teams like the 49ers. They've won 5 since, the early 80s. Heck, I don't know if the Steelers are that franchise anymore where those 6 Super Bowls really have anything to do with the now. I mean, they've been highly successful since the early 90s. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but when people people want to try to end every conversation by saying 6 Super Bowls, that's it, there's nothing else to say. But really, it's not that anymore for the Steelers, I don't think. I mean, it's a proud thing to have the most Super Bowls, but I mean, if you look at the history of their franchise, which is 90 years old now, they won 6 in 90 years. So, we're not talking about the Yankees here. Even the Yankees, it's been a while since they've won. So my point is, we need to start enjoying things a little bit more that don't end in Super Bowls. Like I wrote in the article, the 72 season was so magical. People still, old-time fans still talk about that year because it was so much fun. It was the first time the Steelers really gave the fans anything to truly celebrate, and they finally paid something off. All those years they never won a playoff game. 40 years, they finally won a playoff game, and they did it in the most improbable and magical way ever that we still celebrate. There's a statue at the airport. Franco Harris can he doesn't have to buy a drink for the rest of his life. Frenchie Fuqua, made a life outside of football as a public speaker because of that play. I mean, we talk about it. So it was the first time for the Steelers and their fans to really have something like that to embrace, and they put that, that season is talked about almost as much as those Super Bowl years, maybe even more because of the Immaculate Reception, so, were we soft back then? People, that's a word I keep hearing thrown around, describing the Bengals and the reaction of their fans this week when they greeted them at the airport after the loss to the Rams. They had a rally on Wednesday at some park in Cincinnati, Washington Park, I think. And people said, "Oh, it's a bad look. It would never happen in Pittsburgh. They would never have a parade or a rally for a loss." Well, maybe they should. Maybe more things should be celebrated. And I realize, a championship has more weight than anything else, but I think other things should be appreciated too. I mean, I feel sorry for a lot of these, like the mid '90s teams. They had, great teams, and obviously they got to the Super Bowl, but it's like, all right, you didn't win it, so whatever. You were nice players, but you didn't win it, so have a nice life. Outside of Woodson, who's a first ballot Hall of Famer, maybe the greatest cornerback of all time. Outside of him, who else from those '90s teams really has a great relationship with the Steelers, the Steeler team? And I mean, not the team. I mean, but the fans. Do we really talk about any of those players and celebrate them and celebrate their the moments that they brought here? Because they were some fantastic times in the '90s. And I can't say that we really do all that much, I mean, every now and then, but not like, they would have, like, say the '90s happened in the '60s before the '70s. I think, or maybe in the '50s, and then there was like a 20-year gap before the '70s. I think if they did that in the 50s, what they did in the 90s. They came close, but they didn't, quite win it. I think we would have celebrated those teams a little bit more. So, it's a great thing to make it to a Super Bowl. It's a hard thing to do to make it to a Super Bowl. And yeah, you can mock them because they're the Bengals, but to act like that, all right, there's 31 losers and only one winner. That's not true. There's varying degrees of success. And the Bengals were literally a play or two away from reaching the ultimate heights of the NFL. So to mock them for that, I think that's a bad look. To mock them for embracing that and celebrating it and cherishing it, that's a bad look. And it makes you look petty. In my opinion, it makes you look petty. So that's all I want to say about that. I hope the Steelers give us that kind of a season that the Bengals gave their fans in the not so distant future. Because remember, they won 3 playoff games in the last month. And as we keep saying over and over again, the Steelers have won 3 in the last 11 years. So, they're definitely creating a situation where we're going to appreciate the next time they go on a major run because, the last 10, 11 years, they obviously had some good teams here, but they haven't had that postseason run that, that makes you want to, it galvanizes a fan base and a community. So hopefully they can have that kind of a season again. And when they do, I'm thinking we're going to appreciate it because it'll have been a while since the last one. So that's all I want to say about that stuff. And as the title suggests, the offseason is now in full swing for the Steelers. And what was it? Earlier in the week, they hired Pat Meyer to be their new offensive line coach. He's somewhat of a veteran. He's been coaching for 20 years if you count the collegiate level. He's 49 years old, so he's somewhat young yet. He doesn't have a ton. I wouldn't say a ton of NFL experience, maybe a decade, which isn't bad. He didn't do so. I mean, the line didn't do so hot when he was with the Panthers the last couple of years, but he did a pretty good job with the Chargers before that. It was 2017 or 2018. Phillip Rivers was only sacked 17 times, so that's pretty good. But like a lot of position coaches, I'm sure the issues on display in Carolina had to do with personnel more so than coaching. And coaching obviously is a big deal, but personnel matters too, and I realize everybody wanted Mike Munchak to be the offensive line coach again, but number one, we don't know what Mike Munchak's priorities are right now. Does he want to coach in Pittsburgh again? Does he want to coach anywhere again? Remember, it's a two-way street. It's not just about what the Steelers want. It's about what the other party wants. And maybe Mike Munchak doesn't want to come back here. Maybe he doesn't want to coach anymore. Who knows? And also, there's only one Mike Munchak and there are 32 teams, meaning 31 other teams don't get to employ Mike Munchak. And yet, just like what I talked about earlier, there are varying degrees of success with offensive line play all throughout the NFL. So, you can find a really good offensive line coach who's not named Mike Munchak. Did the Steelers find out with Pat Meyer? I don't know. But, the guy that replaced Munchak in Denver, somebody named Burt Berry. I never heard of that guy before in my life. I don't know how good or bad he is as a coach. And as I've often said, when it comes to this kind of stuff, especially with position coaches, back in the day, and I realize it's a different time now, so it's probably silly and old man yelling at the clouds for me to say this, but back in the day, they would name a position coach, and you're just like, all right, cool, and then you wouldn't really think much about it anymore. Obviously the head coach gets headlines when you name a new head coach, and the coordinators to an extent got publicity. Guys like Tony Dungy and Joe Walton, and for different reasons. One, because Tony Dungy was so young, and Joe Walton because it was a disaster. But those guys got talked about, but the position coach is not so much. So it's a different time now, and everybody lives and dies with every little move that's made. But really, what's going to help the Steelers' offensive line is going to be what they do with personnel. Yeah, coaching's going to be a big deal, and Meyer's going to, it's going to be incumbent upon him to coach these guys up. But remember, when Munchak was here, he also came along when Marquise Pouncey was a Pro Bowler. David DeCastro was coming into his own as one of the best guards in the NFL. And Marcus Gilbert, who he coached up into being one of the best right tackles to his credit. And Ramon Foster was a mainstay at guard. And he did really coach up a lot of project type players like Al Villanueva, Matt Filer, Chris Hubbard. So, BJ Finney, the first time around. So, he should be commended for his work here, but he also had a lot to work with. So it's up to the Steelers to provide Meyer with more talent to work with. And I think, if they do, then we can more fairly judge him. If you're expecting him to work miracles like they were trying to do in the late 00s with a bunch of, undrafted free agents and low round draft picks. It didn't matter who the coach was back then. He wasn't going to be able to get anything out of them. And the line really didn't start to turn around until they decided to invest in it with personnel. So, I think we'll be able to more accurately assess the Meyer hiring in maybe a year or two, and not really right now. So that's all I pretty much had to say about anything tonight. I will round out the show by taking your questions and comments. Let's see what we got. Pedro asked, so how is DeCastro? Do you think he'll ever play again? I haven't heard anything. I know he was dealing with a pretty bad ankle last year. I don't know if he ever had surgery on that or not. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to play again. I just looked at a list of the top free agents heading into the offseason. I didn't see his name listed anywhere. So I don't know if he's done or not. I mean, has been no official announcement about his future. So I guess we'll have to keep an eye on that. And Steelers Pittsburgh says about the Bengals. Of course, he says Bungles, which, it's a Steeler fan mainstay, thanks to Minor Cope. And he says the Bungles are going to find out how difficult it is to get back to the Super Bowl. They have a target on their backs. Well, it's difficult to get there if you don't have a target on your back, let alone if you do. And that brings me to another point. So many quarterbacks who have made it, who have lost their first appearance in the Super Bowl. I guess every single one of them never made it back. So Joe Burrow, I mean, really, it's in the past, so it has nothing to do with now, but he has that history to overcome, I guess. So we'll see if he can do it. I mean, he looks like the real deal, and they have a good thing going. So I'm going to be interested to see how that all plays out. And Sherry Richards says, until 3 years from now, meaning the Bengals, when they are 3-14 away, they built a team they can't. Well, they built a team with a lot of youth. So I don't know how that's. I mean, the Rams are the team that, unless you're talking about the Rams, maybe you're talking about the Rams, because the Rams are a team that's definitely this close to. They're built to win now and then blow the whole thing up whenever all is said and done. So maybe you're talking about them. I don't know. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Trucker Wes Hickok says, I'm growing tired of the mock drafts that have us going quarterback in the first round, or in, I guess, the first round of the draft. So I guess you're not a fan of the quarterbacks there, Wes. But I mean, the way things are shaking out now with so many teams, I mean, obviously there's free agents that they're veteran free agents that are going to get signed, and trades are going to be made. So it's going to fill a lot of slots for teams that are drafting ahead of Pittsburgh. But I truly think by the time all is said and done, Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett are going to be gone. So the question will be, will they draft somebody like a Sam Howell or Matt Corral or whatever? Ritter, he's getting a lot of love now. Desmond Ritter from Cincinnati. I don't know. But, I mean, you know, the funny thing is that they've been talking about quarterbacks so much, like it's like the thought of any other position sounds kind of, kind of meh. I don't know if I'm so, it's like fast food. You know, once you start eating fast food, you start craving it and nothing else. You don't want anything else. I don't want a defensive lineman. I don't want a cornerback. I don't want an inside. I want a quarterback, but whether that's against my own judgment or not, or I don't know. But so I'm taking Wes is not a fan of the current crop of quarterbacks coming out. And a lot of people feel that frustration. They agree with you there, Wes. Me, I don't know. I'm willing to, if they believe in a guy, I'm willing to trust them and see if they can develop him into being something close to a franchise quarterback, if not a franchise quarterback, because like we always say, it's not always where you're drafted, it's who drafts you. And, you see the struggles that Baker Mayfield is going through in Cleveland, although I think a lot of it could be injury related. Last year, people forget he was dealing with an injury. But he was drafted number 1. Lamar Jackson was drafted last in the first round of the same draft. And, he's the Ravens franchise. He's their team. They built the team around him. John Harbaugh, say what you want about him. We always do, but he's a great head coach. It's a great organization. And they did everything they could to develop him and to build the team around him. So, if Pittsburgh gets a quarterback in here, a young quarterback, I'm confident they're going to do everything that they can to build the team around, to develop him through coaching and through personnel and build the team around him. So, but it's still a ways away. Who knows what's going to happen? Robert Mullen says the road to the Super Bowl goes through Pittsburgh. So if the Bengals beat Pitt, they deserve the Super Bowl. There you go. Well, I'm not so sure it applied this year, Robert, but hey, it's like I said, defense mechanism, whatever makes you feel better, I guess. But they did beat up the Steelers twice this year. they definitely beat them up pretty badly the last time too. So. And Tomlin's, this is Mark Malone. Again, I always say every week, it would be something if it was the real Mark Malone, or I shouldn't say the real Mark Malone, but the Mark Malone, who was the former quarterback of the Steelers in the 1980s. And he says Tomlin's postseason standard is pretty freaking substandard. Well, that's been an issue with fans in recent years, which again makes me laugh when people mock a team that just lost the Super Bowl. I mean, that's a pretty awesome year to have, making it to the Super Bowl. So, Evgeny Crosby says Steelers have the opportunity this offseason to make big moves. How many offseason moves how many offseasons can you say that? Yeah, they have currently about $32 million under the cap. I was scrolling through Twitter on Friday, and Mark Caboli, who's a beat writer for the Steelers for The Athletic, he laid it out, through restructuring and cutting to it, trading somebody or whatever. They could have as much as $71 million in cap space this year. So, they're definitely pretty adept at making room when they don't have room. So, obviously they're going to be able to make more room, even with $32 million as it is. So, yeah, I mean, this is the one off season that I can think of since I started really paying attention to this kind of off season. Like you have to pay attention when you're doing when you're semi-hobby is a writer and podcaster for Behind the Steel Curtain, you have to pay attention to the offseason all the time. And since I've been doing this, I can't remember them having this much cap room. So they're going to have a lot of chances to address a lot of needs, So, next month when free agency kicks in, how they always say, people say, the draft is, the morning of the draft is like their Christmas morning. Well, a lot of people who are into free agency and that time of year, it's going to be like they're not going to be able to sleep the night before because the Steelers are going to have a lot of money to do some damage this year, and hopefully not real damage, but positive damage if they so choose. But I look for them to be as pragmatic as always, but maybe with a more aggressive approach in certain areas. Signing. I was looking at the tackles that are available, the cornerbacks that are available. So I mean that's definitely. I would try to keep a Killer Witherspoon, maybe Joe Hayden at a reasonable price because I don't think there's that much difference between him and Stephon Gilmore. So if they can get Joe Hayden back in terms at a reasonable price, I would definitely like to have him back. And I think Witherspoon, if you get him at a decent price, but you can also bring somebody else in from the outside. And there's plenty of cornerbacks out there. There's plenty of tackles and guards out there. So there's definitely, and I'm just in the beginning stages of paying attention to this because I am so in love with the NFL actual season that I don't really pay attention to free agency until I have to. And I was looking at the PFF, and there's some names on there that are pretty intriguing. But if it were me, I would try to sign a good guard or a tackle. I like Dan Moore as your left tackle. A lot of people want him to go over to right tackle, which I don't know why, because he only played left tackle in college, as far as, we all know. I mean, I think we all know that. And, it seems to be left tackle seems to be his natural position. So if you can keep him there and go out and get a really good right tackle, I think that would go a long way in helping to improve your line. Obviously, Kevin Dotson is the sky's the limit for him at left guard. So yeah, so there's some possibilities, and of course, as far as free agents, and of course the quarterbacks. Jameis Winston's a name that's been bandied about this week, and to be honest with you, I like him better than anybody else I've heard. As far as like, if you're talking about Marcus Mariota, Jimmy G, Trubisky, give me Jameis Winston. He's young enough. He's got one heck of an arm, and he's big. He's not mobile. I mean, he's mobile enough, but he's not like looking to take off and run every time. He's a guy who likes to take shots down the field. And wouldn't that be pretty darn refreshing? Somebody who can do that after the last few years. So if they can get Jameis Winston I think I saw the price for him, the projected price for a 1-year deal would be like $7 million, maybe as much as 12 with incentives. If you can swing that deal, if you're not going to draft the quarterback, or even if you are going to draft the quarterback next year, but you need somebody to be your quote unquote bridge quarterback for a year or so, hey, I would take Jameis Winston. Yeah, he throws interceptions, but he also throws a lot of touchdowns and he throws for a lot of yards, and he's a weapon. And let's be real, I love Big Ben, but he really hasn't been a weapon for them since 2018. And they haven't had a weapon at the quarterback spot since 2018. So, yeah, Jameis Winston would be my top choice if I had to go veteran quarterback. I forgot about Jameis Winston. Somebody reminded me of him a couple weeks ago. Before that, it was all Jimmy G in my mind. And who else was I thinking about? Obviously Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. They were the names out there. But to me, Jameis Winston would be great. He's not going to cost a lot, and he's still young, and he's still talented, and he's had recent success in the NFL. So he's certainly more proven than Trubisky and Mariota. So yeah, if that's the route they take, I would be on board. So there's a lot of possibilities for them as far as free agents, and they can address a lot of needs this time around. So obviously they have their own players they have to re-sign. That's going to eat up some cap space. But in addition to that, they're going to be able to go out and make a key move or two if they so wish, and I can't see why they wouldn't. They're always about being competitive, and that's their motto. They don't want to tank it. So, I have no doubt they're going to go out and make some moves in addition to their own players. They're going to bring some guys in to help them win in 2022. So. And this is Wes Hickok, and Wes knows the stuff with the draft. I mean, a lot of people who've been affiliated with Behind the Steel Curtain know their draft talk, and Wes is one of them. And he says, cornerback Roger McCreary, inside linebacker Nakobe Dean, tackle Trevor Penning, in no particular order, are his top 3 for the 20th pick. Well, I trust your judgment, Wes. We'll see what happens. We got a ways to go yet. Free agency will inform what they do in the draft for sure. But yeah, who knows what's going to, we have the combine in what, about a week and a half or so. So that'll help solidify things a little bit anyway, as far as where these guys are ranked and where they're projected to go. And this is one from Yul Skinner, and he's right on the money here. He says some of the better players in the NFL never make the Hall of Fame or the Super Bowl, in my opinion. That's true. That's. I mean, speaking of mocking people, I always get a kick out of people who mock borderline Hall of Famers. Are you kidding me? Why would you mock those guys? I mean, that's and I'm not just talking about Steelers fans. I'm talking about fans who hate the Steelers, like people mocking Hines Ward for not making the Hall of Fame. Okay, but he's in the discussion. That's a mark of one hell of a career. If you get to the point, if you had a career where people are arguing about whether or not you should be in the Hall of Fame, then I salute you, because very few players ever make it to that level. So, and I think I'm getting up against it in time. It's been a fun show. I enjoy talking to you guys as always, and I'm gonna call it a night. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. There will be no football this weekend, but there will be plenty of football talk, as there always is. And please tune in to Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. Check out the podcast. They keep bringing them to you each and every day, sometimes multiple times a day. So if you need a Steeler fix, even in this relatively downtime until the combine kicks off, we're the place to get that fixed. So until I talk to you on Monday with Brian and Shannon, have a great weekend. And as always, go Steelers.